This is Nobody Cares. I moved to Calgary in 96, in October of 96, so I think this is probably 97, sometime early in the year, May, June, something like that, because I formed a company. I was going to form a company, and I had talked to my accountant about this and agreed, and he said, okay, and he was going to get everything all arranged, all the papers and everything, and so I had an appointment to come back to sign everything. So his office was Sarcee and Richmond Road. It's on the east side of Sarcee. Their Signal Hill is on the west side, and there's a smaller mall that's on the east side. And it's changed since then. I'm pretty sure the Canadian Tire wasn't there, and the entrance was different. And I went there quite a bit because my dentist was also in that same building. And it's hard for me to remember, but it's more like there was double doors, and when you went in back then, 20 years ago or whatever it is, you kind of went into an open area and there was a small food court there. There definitely was a small food court there, and then offices in different directions. So on the day of my appointment, and I always hate to be late, so I'd sooner be 15, 20 minutes early rather than ever be late for an appointment. It's just the way I am. So I got there, and I was early. I was at least 15 minutes early. And so I found a parking place, and the parking lot wasn't really that busy, and I had backed in, kind of on the south side. It was down to my left, I guess, was where the mall was. It was a nice day, so I opened up the door on my truck, and I turned sideways. This is something else I rarely do, but I'm a smoker, and I was going to have a smoke. And so I'm sitting on the seat sideways in my truck, and I fire up a cigarette, and I'm sitting there letting the time pass. And out of the corner of my eye, my peripheral vision off to my right, I can see this lady coming across the parking lot, and she's coming towards me, making her way towards me. And then I can see it's a native lady. And I never look at her at all, really, but I know she's coming up to me, and I know what she's going to do. She's going to bum a cigarette. And so I just stay right where I am. Like I say, I don't look, and she does. She comes right up to the truck, gets down in front of me. Hey, can I get a smoke from you? And so I give her a smoke. She lights it up and says thanks and turns around and walks away from me and walks down towards the mall. And I watch her go, and she disappears in the front door. So I didn't think any more about it, right? Finish my smoke and check my watch, and got to let a little more time go by, and so I do. So finally, when it's down to about 5 minutes before my appointment time, I get out, lock the truck, and head into the mall. But when I walk through the front doors, right immediately on the right, there was a small booth there, and there was she was like a senior lady, and I'm sure this was her dream, that she'd finished her career or whatever. And anyway, she was doing this late in life. Like the soup that she made was homemade, and when she made a sandwich for you, I had eaten there. I'd been in that mall quite a few times. You know, she made them perfectly. Like she had this little touch that she would do with everything. And her butter tarts I'm sure were homemade as well. Well, when I walked through the door that day, there's the security guard is standing. There's a big group of people, and there's a big panic going on. And I have to walk through this crowd to get to my accountant's office. And so I say to somebody, what's going on here? And he says, well, the lady got robbed. Some woman with a knife come in here and went running right into the back where this lady works and keeps the register, and told her to get back out of the way, and grabbed all the cash out of the till and then ran. Now, I guess there's another way out, a back way out of that mall, which I guess this Indian lady knew about. So now I'm like, oh, Jesus Christ, what am I going to do now? I get this appointment. And so I do nothing. And I actually don't feel too guilty about doing nothing, because I'm sure that I really couldn't pick her out of a lineup if that was asked of me, or I couldn't identify her. I literally hadn't paid that much attention to her. So I don't do anything. And I go in for my appointment, and I sit in there for a while, and we had some papers to sign, and my accountant had forgotten to tell me that I needed a bank account, a company bank account. And so I had to leave, and it meant going across the street over to West Hills because there was no banks on this side, and they had every bank in the world on the other side, and open up a bank account. And when I came out of the accountant's office to go back to my truck, nothing had changed. They're waiting for the police to come, and the police had not arrived yet. So now it's like 20 minutes have gone by. The crowd had dispersed a little bit. So I do that. I get in my truck, go all the way across the other side, choose a bank. So I chose one that I'd never dealt with before. I thought maybe that would be the wise thing to do. TD it turned out to be. And stand in line, get to the counter, open up an account. It takes time. Put some money in there so that the account, you have to do that to make the account legitimate, and get all the paper, get everything done, come back out of there, get back in my truck, drive all the way across Sarcee again to the other side, park again, and go back into that mall, and there's still no cop there. It's the same situation, and now it's like frickin' hour has gone by close to it. I still didn't say anything. I just went into my accountant's office and finished the business that I had, left there, and there was still no cop ever showing up. That's all this lady would have liked to have had, I'm sure, at that point, is just somebody with authority, the cop's authority, come in and take charge. Unbelievable. Now I'll give you my red ribbon, lead pipe cinch guarantee that if a call went out over the police radio, officer in distress, lady with a knife, that within 5 minutes there'd be a dozen cop cars and 20 cops on scene. And yet, a nice little old lady who gets robbed at knife point, who probably has never had more than a parking ticket her entire life, and not one goddamn cop in the entire city of Calgary can get there, well, it was at least an hour, fucking pisses me off. The theme for the story today is something I feel quite strongly about. And the first story I recorded probably about 6 months ago now. And so, but before I could continue with this theme, we got sidetracked and on to different things. And now that I'm finally back to it, I realize I listened to the first story again, and I have 3 more stories that I want to tell that are all in the same theme. And I realize that if I give each of those stories the same amount of detail and color, that this whole thing's going to run way too long. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pare them down just to the basics of the story, and hopefully that'll be good enough. I think it'll be good enough. There's a service station on the north end of Enderby, and occasionally when I was going that direction, I would pull in there and fill up with gas. It was just a merge off the highway and a merge back on. Nothing unusual about that, but this gas station also had a bakery. And so, you know, if you needed buns or thought you needed butter tarts, it was... So anyway, that's what I'm doing. So I'm standing there, and I pulled in, and I'm filling my truck up with gas. This guy comes out, and he's got a bunch of signs in his hand that he's made up, and he's attaching them to each one of the pumps. And so I go over and have a look, and the sign says, "Pay before you pump" on it. This is obviously before it became the law in BC. And so I get talking to this guy, and I say to him, you know, I'm not really in favor of this. I don't like the idea that I'm being treated like a criminal. And he said, yes, he said, I can understand that. He said, but last night we had a truck pull in here, and they filled up with gas, and they had a bunch of 5-gallon jerry cans with them. They filled all those up as well, and they took off. So a gas and dash, right? He said, I phoned the police. He said, well, first of all, he tells me he has video cameras there. He's got the whole thing on video. Now, he didn't have the license plate of the truck somehow, missed that on the video. He phones the police about this, and the cops won't come. They just say, sorry, it's just not big enough for us to bother with. Chances of success of us finding these people is a very, very remote chance of that. We can't help you. Now, I don't think it's unreasonable to expect the police to, at a minimum, just stop by and talk to the owner of this business, look at his video, talk to him in person, explain to him that it's really difficult to solve crimes like this. well, say something like, well, we'll keep our eye open for the truck or whatever. Jesus, Murphy. Okay, first of all, this story, I really don't know a lot of detail about it, but it doesn't matter because I know the outcome. I met this man in prison. He was an old man. He'd been in for multiple years, and he had multiple years left to go on his sentence. His mind was starting to go, and his life was essentially over. He was a pilot on a private plane, private jet, returning from Southeast Asia, and the DEA had a snitch that informed them that he was going to be smuggling heroin back with him on this trip. The jet was either coerced into landing in Mexico City, or it was a regularly scheduled stop. Perhaps they couldn't make it all the way without fueling up. That's the kind of details that I don't know. But it really doesn't matter. He did land in Mexico City. The U.S., the DEA had given the Mexican authorities this information. They boarded the plane. They did the search. They found the heroin, and they arrested him. And as a result of that, he spent many years in a Mexican prison before going back to the States. Now, this I don't know either on the prisoner exchange or perhaps he finished his sentence there and then came back and had to face further charges in the United States. When I saw him, he was in jail in the United States. Now, I think we've all heard stories about Mexican prisons and what hellholes they are. And I think we also know how corrupt the system is down there and that we do not enjoy the same rights in Mexico as you would in the United States, Canada, and many other places in the world. What has happened here is the police have made a decision, determined that this man is guilty, and that they have then sentenced him. This is wrong. They do not have those powers. Now, I'm sure that if you questioned the police about this, they would say, oh, well, it's all in the spirit of cooperation with our Mexican partners. Well, crap on that. They knew exactly what they were doing. And I don't care who you are. You are innocent until you either admit your guilt in a court of law or you're proven to be guilty in a court of law. It is then up to the judge to sentence you, not the police. The police knew exactly what they were doing here. This is an American case with an American citizen on an American registered plane, and it should have been dealt with in an American courtroom. Period. I'd gone out to play golf this day, and with my buddy, a guy that I played with hundreds of times. And sometimes we had a foursome, but on this particular day, there was just the two of us. It was fine. And so go out there, you get paired up with somebody else and play, right? And now he lived outside of town, and we never went out to the course together. He always just drove out there, and same as I did. But on this particular day, he was getting a new set of tires for his vehicle, and so he had talked to me and said, well, can you just pick me up, and we'll leave the truck there, and they can have it and take their time putting the tires on. Well, yeah, sure, of course we can do that. So that's what happens. So we go out and we play, and we didn't do any drinking on the course. I haven't done that for decades, trying to take golf a little bit more seriously. But after our game, we always went up, sat on the patio, on the balcony, and had a beer. And on this day, we had shared a pitcher of beer. Finished our beer, went down, got my truck, and headed back towards town. Pulled out of the golf course, and there's a little bit of traffic, of course. And now I've never checked my odometer. Hundreds of times I've been out there, but it's got to be 4 or 5 kilometers, something like that. It's Highway 97 up to Highway 1, and there's a light there. Federal government too cheap to put in an overpass. And so anyway, left-hand turn onto Highway number 1 and then into Salmon Arm. Just before we get to the first light at Salmon Arm, right in front of the Chevy dealership, the lights come on behind me. Here it's a cop behind me, an unmarked car, and he's stopping me. And I can't believe this. Like, why is he stopping me? And so I roll my window down, and when he comes up to my window, the first thing I say to him is, "Why are you stopping me?" And he says, "Well, I observed you leaving the golf course, and it's well known that people like to drink when they're golfing." And he said, "So I'm going to just check to see if you've been drinking." And I had beer in my breath, and I said, he can tell probably. I forget just exactly how it goes, but I say, "Well, yeah, we had a beer after we were done, just one beer, and now we're on our way home." And he says, "Well, I'm going to give you the breathalyzer." And I have to go back and get in the back seat of his car, and I'm telling you what, I am boiling mad. I can hardly even speak. I'm so mad. He has no right to stop me. And you have to sit there for like 10 minutes before he actually administers this breath test. And I'm sitting there thinking, I am fighting this. There's no doubt. He has obviously followed me all the way from the golf course where I didn't speed. I wasn't wandering around the highway. I didn't fail to stop. I didn't fail to signal. I didn't do anything. There was nothing wrong with my driving at all. He has absolutely no right to be stopping me, period. So finally, the 10 minutes go by. And now in BC at that time, they had changed the law. It's not 0.8 anymore. It's 0.05. And I think they've done this in other provinces as well. So finally he gives me the thing and tells me what to do, blah, blah. And so I give a healthy blow on it. I have no idea what the result's going to be here, whether half a pitcher of beer is too much or... Anyway, I blow 0.046. Now, I probably say something at this point, I mean, it's close, but I'm legal. And now the cop gets pissed off at me, and he gets nasty with me. He says, "You go home," he says, "right now." He said, "If I see you out on the road again today," he says, "I'm going to pull you over and give you another test because I think your level might still be on the way up." So I just let that go, as mad as I am, because I'm actually legal to drive and do whatever I want. This law is the law, and I'm within the legal bounds of the law here. But he could be right for all I know. No, I lived on the east side of town, and my friend, where he'd left his truck, couldn't get any further west than where this tire place was. And that's the reason I mentioned that he was riding with me that day, is because now I'm actually a little worried about driving him all the way across there and then having to come back. And so we go to my place. He didn't mind. Now he's got because of this cop, who had no right to stop me in the first place, now my friend has to call a cab and take a cab all the way over there to his vehicle. Unreal. Yeah, I'm still mad about it. I don't know, it's 20 years later. I have the right. You have the right. Every citizen in every free country in the world has the right to drive down any highway anytime that they please. And as long as they're not breaking any of the traffic laws, should never have to face intimidation or harassment from the police. They have no right to pull you over. I met George at Sandstone, and he was from Montreal, probably 20 years older than I was. George was a nice man. He really was. He was always welcome to sit down with us, with me, or any of the Canadians, and play cards or just BS with us. Whatever we were doing. George had an unfortunate childhood. He'd grown up poor with alcoholic parents and had started getting into trouble when he was really young. And that just continued his whole life. He spent most of his teenage years in detention centers. And then, as a young man, just continued to get in trouble. Had served time for armed robbery and several other offenses. George told us that at some point he'd actually tried to settle down. He did have a job and was making some money and trying to live a reasonable life. But that, there was, especially on weekends, he'd get together with his friends, and once they got drinking, there was going to be trouble. He said there was always trouble of some kind once they got together. And what the police would do, he said, is if they spotted him on Friday afternoon or early Friday evening, they would just grab him, take him downtown, and throw him in jail. And keep him there for the weekend, and open up the doors Monday morning and let him go. He said that they didn't really abuse me or do anything like that. He said, I got fed like everybody else, and they brought the book rack around so I had something to read. Yeah, and he said, there isn't a damn thing that you can do about it. There's no record, and nobody would believe you anyway. It got to the point where George actually had to leave Montreal. Now, I know there's people out there who would say, good, who cares? He's just a criminal, and that the police doing a little preventive justice is just fine with me. Throw the son of a bitch in jail. Well, I care, and everybody should care. Because at that time, he did not have any sentence hanging over his head. He'd served his time and repaid his debt to society, if you want to call it that. This is a free country, and we have the right to walk down the street here in any free country in the world. This is not Russia or China. I don't care who you are, or what color your skin is, or who you pray to, or what you wear, or what you eat, or what you've done in the past. We all enjoy the same rights, period. Now, I know that not many people have had the life experiences that I've had or stories that I've got, and perhaps have no reason at all to doubt the police. But you should doubt them. You should be concerned. This authoritarian right-wing stance that's permeated through the police force is very, very concerning. They're paid out of the public purse. They work for us. And what does it say on their badge? To serve and protect? Well, they're not doing either. We deserve better, and we should demand better. The police need to be accountable to somebody other than themselves. They cannot just run around deciding what the law is or what laws they're going to enforce or breaking the laws. The cornerstone to our rights and freedoms is the fact that we cannot be arbitrarily arrested and imprisoned.